Have you ever had a revelation in your business, or maybe you changed something that for a long time you thought was the right thing to do, and then you're like, no, I'm going to do this instead? Maybe it's about your banking, or maybe it's about how you deal with clients, or maybe it's a micro thing that maybe isn't as big a deal, but you just know that you needed to change. And maybe it was like an aha moment, and you're like, oh, this would be so much better for where I'm at now. Well, that's what we're talking about today. I've experienced those things in my business, and I'm experiencing that right now as I change something with how I handle my finances and my banking, which is kind of nerdy. But today we're going to talk about that with Sarah Bradshaw, who is a good friend of mine. She's so sweet and so awesome. We met through a Rising Tide get-together where we both spoke on pricing and money and finances and business goals. And for me, I was primarily speaking on the pricing as far as how we charge and stuff like that, similar to the few episodes we had in the podcast when we first started. And Sarah was so educated and so intentional about her particular business plan when it came to how she handled the money after it came in. She had multiple accounts and had a different system. And I just love people's philosophies. Like, what are they thinking when they receive their payments? What's their strategy? How do they, if they set their goals a certain way, how are they going about that? And that's what I love about Sarah. She's so intentional with that. So when I emailed her for this podcast, I wanted her to talk about that system, and I loved it and why she went with it and how is it going and situations in her life where it benefited her. But she actually responded and said, Adam, I changed everything. Everything is so different. I met with a coach, and we'll get into that a little bit in the show, but we want to see, she was nervous about not having the same plan on the podcast. And I was like, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about changing systems. Let's talk about when you get to that point in your business and you say, hey, I've done this for a long time, but I think this will be better for me in the long run or for the next season of my business. And she was down with that, and I loved her transparency. And so we're going to talk about that today. So without any further ado, here's Sarah Bradshaw. Sarah, how's it going?
Hey, Adam. Good to talk to you.
It's such a fun day. We record on Tuesdays, and but Tuesdays are just like busy days for, I feel like, everybody. It's like the day that a lot of weekend workers go back to work, and it's just crazy. How's everything going with you?
It's great. Yeah, you're right. Tuesday's the new Monday. So I've had 2 shots of espresso so far this morning and ready to brew another one as soon as we finish this call. That's just what Tuesdays are like. But it's a good day.
So I heard a little birdie that was actually you, but that it is your 11th, as we're recording, it's October 24th. It's your 11th anniversary as a photographer.
Yes. Today I do celebrate 11 years as a photographer. So October 24th, 2006 is the day that I moved home from Chicago and moved into my parents' basement to start this career in photography. And then started my business officially in August of 2008. And then I went full-time in January 2009. So been doing this a long time, but today's just a really significant day. And this is one of my favorite days to just look back on the past and just be really thankful for the path that has brought me here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's so funny. 2006, I was in high school in 2006. But I feel like we're the same age, but maybe we won't talk about that. That's okay. That is awesome.
A little bit older.
That is so cool. I love that. Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
From the Bearded Talk fam. So
thanks.
That is really cool. What has that been like? Did you start your business in Chicago then? And then now you're in DC. So yeah. What was that kind of like?
Yeah. So no, I started my business when I moved back here to the East Coast. I was living in Chicago working for a nonprofit, and my department got closed. My boss's boss was not super happy with me for a couple things. And I just, it was just time for me to leave, and I was very happy to, and knew photography was something I wanted to move into. I planned on pursuing international nonprofit photojournalism. And that's why I moved back with my parents, because I wanted to just kind of get some money in the bank, really get some training and education under my belt in the photography realm, and then kind of use my parents' basement, which I rented out from them, as a home base for my travels. But then once I started pursuing that, I realized this is just not really a good fit for me, and I discovered very serendipitously, actually, wedding photography, fell into it. It wasn't my intention to pursue it, but I truly believe it's the job that is most perfectly scripted for me, and can't imagine doing anything else.
That is awesome. That's so cool. So, in the nonprofit world, obviously, like moving in with your parents into their basement was a good choice because
There's no money there.
yeah, even it's literally we're trying to make money from things called nonprofits, and obviously
Yeah.
on the East Coast there are some nonprofits that have some cash, but that's really funny.
Yeah, but doing nonprofit photojournalism, it's basically saying, "Hey, I'm a starving artist. I live out of my suitcase, and I will shoot for food." Like exchange food for pictures.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that got old very quickly. But I know you do some of that, Adam, don't you?
Yeah, it's I'm actually leaving at the time of this recording for El Salvador next week, just for 2 days because it's kind of a it's technically all expenses paid, but I'm not necessarily making any profit off of it.
Right.
But it's a great charity, and we were introduced through another charity that I've worked for, and just really exciting stuff, and in a place where there's not a lot of storytelling, and so it's exciting, but it's definitely a different basket of needs and how we shoot. And like one of my nonprofits, the reason they hire me, they're like, Adam, it's just because you like understand the people more than they like the work, but there's so much that goes into it that is a little bit different flavor than what we do for weddings. So it's super fun. But
yeah, it really is. And I really enjoyed the time. I did get to spend about a month in Thailand and close to a month in Kenya doing this work, and really enjoyed it. But did find that I'm a person who needs a lot of consistency in order to thrive as a whole person. I need a lot of consistency. I need deep roots, deep relationships, kind of a dependable schedule. And living full time in the out of a suitcase doesn't really lend itself to that. And I just found myself not really healthy spiritually and emotionally. So
yeah,
weddings has been a much better fit for me. And it uses all of the same reasons that I wanted to get into nonprofit photojournalism, I find in the wedding world. So telling a story of beautiful things that are true, that give life and joy for years to come, that help other people love their life more. Storytelling, obviously. And I really discovered a love for heritage and investing in a couple's heritage and for them to leave a legacy. So I always shoot with the grandchildren in mind, the grandchildren of the couple. And yeah, so it's really been a fun journey, just discovering, I think just how much the Lord really had wedding photography for me as part of my journey. And I just didn't know that until I tried it.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, for few people do we plan on this being our career, but no, absolutely. And I think too, both of us, a lot of people will see, nonprofit photography and storytelling is a lot more popular than it used to be. And people see that kind of, for you to spend a month anywhere, it's like, oh my gosh, like that's incredible. And I'm sure your experiences were great, but it's so many other life things, it's just arranging priorities in your life. And when you're on the road like that, living out of a suitcase, a lot of those things, don't get priority that need to have priority for us to thrive. Like you said, like for you need your deep relationships and your deep roots and the consistency. But people only see vacation essentially, or they see
exactly
like very fun. And it's like, no, this is not not that awesome. And I think photographers aren't being fake. I think we try to find the joy wherever we are in every situation, but it's at the same time, it's like, no, it's still work.
Yeah, it's still work, very much so. And yeah, and there's a lot of challenges that I think that living in need and not having financial freedom makes finding the joy even harder sometimes for photographers. So I think that's one reason I have become really passionate about, making sure that my books are in order and my business structures are in order, so that I do have the freedom to travel if I want to, or give if I want to. But early on, especially, I found one of the biggest reasons I started doing weddings is because I was broke. And I just needed money. Yeah. And I had the skill, and I was like, I need to be able to eat, it's kind of a big deal here. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I don't think people understand when they tell me that they're a full-time photographer and they live not near a big city, and there's some, give and take, and they're like, hey, you could get bigger and better clients, I'm just like, yeah, but DC is like the third most expensive city in the country.
No.
And it's just like, it's not getting any cheaper. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. Like, fortunately, you and I have spouses now, but it's, when I first started, I was single, and I know a lot of other single business owners, and it's really tough. And so like having your finances and cash flow is super good.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. So when we first met, we were teaching together for a Rising Tide event, and I loved just your intentionality when it came to your plan at the time. I know we've switched, which we'll get into, but I would love to hear more about what whether it's how you keep your books and what's your philosophy, things that you love to do, or tips and tricks you've learned to really like hone in your system. And at the same time, kind of at the time, how did you handle your bank accounts and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great. So I was actually talking with a wedding planner friend of mine yesterday about how looks are so deceiving in the current state of our industry. When I first started 11 years ago, it sounds so old to say that. Like Instagram wasn't even around. Okay. Like wrap your mind around that a little bit. One of the primary drivers for our marketing did not even exist then. Pinterest, I think maybe had just started. I don't even think Pinterest had started then. I think that started in 2007. Anyway, it was there. Things just looked different. So there wasn't the same kind of comparison. Right now, you can like log on to Instagram and see, oh, someone has 37,000 followers. They must be like rolling bank, right? And that's not necessarily the case. And my friend and I were talking about how, there's a big difference between being really successful visually in your marketing and being actually successful in the back end in your business. And oftentimes the people who are super successful and really have their house in order when it comes to their finances don't really have the time to do the same amount of marketing visually. They might, but they may not have the same time. So they may not have the time to do all of the same marketing that someone else might. So it's always been a priority for me to make sure that I am strong and firmly grounded from the inside out. So that starts with me just having a strong spiritual life, having strong relationships, and letting that filter down into my business. And when it comes to the business running itself, to have strong financial stability and a good foundation set, and have a good reason why behind everything that I do, and then let that trickle out into my business. So let's see where to start when it comes to the finances. When I was, I think it's funny that you brought up, being married, because I did start my business single. And I found it easier when I was single than I have since I've gotten married. I had less money, but I also had less financial responsibility. Yeah. So I was able to take bigger risks because the implications were just me. And I've been broke before, right? Okay. So anybody who's been broke knows what it feels like, and you're kind of not scared of it anymore. So I was not scared of being with, I had some, I like buffer. So I always had some financial buffer there. And I'm so thankful I was able to start my business without any debt. I've never had any debt within my business. I've never had any debt besides a very small car loan personally. So I haven't had to bear that burden. But when I first started, I was given some really sound advice from my brother, who also owned a business at the time. He said, every single check that you get, set aside 25% into a bank account for taxes and don't touch it. And so from the very first check that I got, which was like $30 for a portrait session, I set aside 25% of that into a separate bank account. I opened I had multiple free bank accounts, and I opened one that was only for taxes. And I put money into that. I just shoved money in that account. 25% of every single check that I got, and I never touched it. So whenever the tax bill comes around, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got that money. It's no worry at all. There's no fear related to it. So what I've done, what I do now since being married, when we first got married, my husband was at one bank and I was at another. And when we got married, we decided that we would kind of keep that function. I would join his bank account. So for our family, we function, we're one, we have one bank account that we function from a family, but then the business is actually at a different bank. It was just too much hassle to move. But I don't operate as an independent over there. I consider my husband my CFO. So we talk about any big financial decisions, and I pay myself from my bank to our family bank once a month. So when I get a check-in now, what currently happens, I've got three accounts at my current bank. Two of them are business, and one of them is personal. And of those two business accounts, one of them is my working fund. So it's the one that I have a debit card attached to. All of my automatic payment accounts are linked to it. So
sure, expenses.
Expenses. I got the check writing ability with that. And then the other one is still a free account, but there's no check writing abilities. There's no debit card. It's just a holding account. And then my third one is a personal account that I pay myself from. So when I get a check in now, I have an Excel spreadsheet set up that I have different functions that I work from. So I take taxes out and move that to the holding account. I take the expenses that are connected to whatever I'm doing, and I've got factored expenses for each kind of shoot that I do, and I put that into my flex account, and then I take savings and put that into the holding account as well, and then I take whatever percentage I'm paying myself from that check and put that into the personal account, and then once a month I pay myself from the personal account a fixed dollar amount from the personal account to our family account. Sounds a little complicated, and maybe there's a simpler way to do it, but that's the way that's always made the most sense to my brain. So basically how I have steady income is I'm always just shoving money into this personal account, like a percentage from every check. So regardless of whether it's a lean month or an abundant month when it comes to income, because, we're working from variable income because of seasonal work. I always have that lump sum in there that I can pay myself out of. And so like right now I've got enough for paychecks through May is sitting in that account.
Nice.
Which is great. Yeah, which is great. So even if I don't get paid a single dollar between now and May, I'll be fine. And we know in 7 months, I'm probably going to book something. So
hopefully
it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Is that to me, that sounded like the same one we talked about.
Yeah, that's the same one that we talked about. So a couple things that have changed.
Yeah.
So you want to know about what changed. So what's basically changed is some of my percentages. So we realized in July, I hired a business coach, which was for the first time. And that's been an absolutely life-changing experience for me. And I highly recommend, if you can afford it, hire a business coach. It's been so amazing. And what I've realized is that some of the information that gets passed around, the photography industry is really interesting because most of us are self-taught. So we learn from each other, which there's amazing benefit in that.
Right.
But there's also some hardships because if you pass around bad information for long enough, then everyone just believes bad information. And no one is there correcting it.
Yeah.
So basically I've been saving too much for taxes. Which is kind of cool because that meant I have, that's all that.
Friggin' awesome.
I know. So I've been setting aside 35% for taxes out of every single check. And that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And then when we sat down and looked at my books and took a second look at my books, we realized that we've really only been paying between 14 and 17%.
Yeah.
Because of the number of deductions that we can take.
Right.
So I didn't need to save as much, which means I can actually pay myself more.
Right. You have the option of either having more profit for the business and doing stuff with that, or profiting for yourself as well. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So that allowed my husband and I to sit down and say, okay, what marketing goals do we have and what personal goals do we have and what do we want to do between now and December 31st for the 2017 year to just change some of our systems. And do we want to do major changes? Do we want to keep it the same and just have a lump sum that we're going to put into retirement or something like that? So it gave us the opportunity to dream a little bit more. So it was a mistake for the good. I still recommend if you're starting out to set aside between 25 and 30% until you've done your taxes for a couple of years and you know what your tax rate is.
Totally.
Because everyone's expenses are different.
Yeah.
And what they can deduct is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's, for me, the first few years, it was, luckily we didn't have to pay taxes. But at the same time, what that meant was that your business ran at a loss.
Right.
And I was overlapping at the time. So I had a full-time job. And that's pretty normal, at least in the States, the first few years. But you start, making money and start doing really well. And you're like, oh, the tax bill, this is not that fun.
Right.
And yeah, and I think you and I are people that would say, even for you, you said you found that you've been paying something between like 13 and 17. Like I would bet, for you and I, we'd probably be like, hey, well, let's just set 20 just in case. Like,
Oh, yeah.
we're very much on the, and I always say this, it's just like err a little bit on the side. Like, so Sarah isn't going to go to 35% again, but at the same time, you're not going to risk it and be like, let's just only save 12. Like there's a good balance for people to, I always say the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And it's like the more you sweat in these easy situations, the less you'll stress out than in the hard situations. It won't be a surprise.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. We don't do, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dave Ramsey, but he's a financial coach and has actually one of the most listened to radio shows in the US. And he's been, I love listening to his podcast just because he gets the fire burning under me for better financial management.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yes, I'm motivated now. Oh man, I forgot what I was going to say.
It's all right. Just Dave Ramsey. And I'm sure you're going to talk about maybe debt snowball or just running debt free.
Yeah, we're not 100% Dave Ramsey by the book people,
Sure.
but he definitely helps me think more about being willing to live in with a little bit of lack now so that I can have abundance later. So he always says, live like no one else now so you can live and give like no one else later.
Yeah,
so be willing to live sacrificially and be willing to like tighten your belt and not go on that vacation and not splurge on that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that you can have something later. And that's the kind of the mentality that I have for everything in business. Like be willing to do the hard stuff now so that you can do better stuff later.
Absolutely. No, I love that. It's something that Dave Ramsey is really good. I think I would definitely recommend his stuff just for folks as far as like the psychological way that he coaches his finances, in the sense that everything is like pretty principled. It's a no debt principle, and but the way that like the debt snowball is like my favorite thing that he does. And so for nobody who knows what this is, it's essentially, let's say you have 3 debts and they have different interest rates, and maybe it's a student loan, car loan, and something else. And it's like your logic would say, well, let's pay off the one with the highest interest first, just because, that's going to cost us the most money long term. And that makes sense. Like in an Excel spreadsheet, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But something he does, for a lot of people, because it's psychologically, like, we feel successful when we finish things, is he said, hey, like, pay off the smallest debt first. And once that is done, don't like save that money, use that same money that you were paying and pay it on the next, smallest debt. And it helps you like achieve and get into the habit of, killing debt and making this a goal. And I love that. And I know a lot of people too that have done like, hey, let's take out cash every month and put it in envelopes and, don't touch it.
Which we do.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Is that that's just for personal?
That's just for personal. I don't operate on a cash only basis for business because it's just not, it doesn't really make sense for me, but we do operate on a cash only basis for our family. And that is one thing I think is really helpful for anyone who's married, and being married and owning your own business can be really hard. And I know, Adam, you and I have talked about that before. My husband struggled a little bit when we first got married because he has only ever had a 9-to-5 job that gave a paycheck every 2 weeks that was consistent. So he's never had I'm only making like this much this month, but next month I'm making 5 times that much. And he's also never had to just kind of wait and trust that, clients are going to book and at a future point, we need to make plans without having the money there and, just pray and hope that we actually have it when we need it in terms of like, long-term planning. So it was a bit of a learning curve for him when we first started doing our family finances, because he's like, well, but wait, you don't know if you're going to have a wedding, 15 months from now. I'm like, I know I don't know, but I hope so. So we're going to plan as if I will, and hope that we book. But it's been really important and really helpful for both of us to be on the same page and have open communication about our family finances, and for me to operate as part of and consider him part of my team, and for him to consider me as part of his team. So that's why we have our family joint bank account. We don't operate as 2 individuals who both, have separate income. I have a paycheck that goes into our family account. He has a paycheck that goes into our family account, and we both manage that account. And that's been really helpful for us, for our marriage, for just building trust between one another, and also good accountability for me to not spend business finances when I shouldn't. And I think that sometimes it's a temptation. You see like, oh, I've got this lump of cash sitting over here and we have this need. I'm just going to borrow from the business. Well, that's really bad practice. And be careful not to do that. So it's been good for us to have, unity as a husband and wife and have within our finances, which is why we do cash for our family finances, because it helps to keep us accountable to one another and keeps those open lines of communication. We do a date night at home once a month where we sit down and go over our budget, and we parcel out the cash into all of our little envelopes and see where we're at, and just check in on each other and see where we've spent or overspent or underspent for the past month, and how we can do a better job the upcoming month.
I love that. That's awesome. I think people, like, a lot of folks don't know, when you have a business and you're also married, it's this idea of like, we have to keep two things afloat, unless one of the partners, the partner with the 9-to-5 is able, maybe makes an exorbitant amount of money, and you're just like, oh, well, we'll just live off that and you can kind of do your own thing. And, it's something that you have to contribute to as well. But at the same time, like you said, like, also keeping your business afloat is a big deal. Like for me, when I first started, we'd have this cash coming in, and it was really exciting. And like I said, I was overlapping. So I had a job paying my bills, most of my bills at least. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and kill some of my student loans, and which is like a good thing inherently, but how you go about it and how quickly we go about it and how drastic my decisions were, after I'd pay a student loan, I'd be like, oh, well, now what am I doing now? We don't have the cash for that. And I think now too, even being married, not as long as you guys, but just the idea, it's like a weird balance. My wife is a social worker, so she makes like nothing in DC, which is crazy. And then her husband is a freelancer. And so for her, like, the idea of me purchasing, a $5,000 camera or something, or subscription services, like the hosting for your site, right, is maybe $1,000 a year or less or something like that. Like, that idea is insane to most people. And it takes a lot of relationship and communication and talking about it. I think it's good. And it also like helps you stay accountable. Like, oh, do I really support this if I have to explain it? Like, if you can't explain it to your spouse why you do something, then you should probably check on the process of why you do it. And I think one of the things for you is it seems like you've had a process for a long time, and it's helped you kind of reshape things. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think that open communication is it's something that does grow over time. So I know that Buck and I both struggled early on with that, but we've definitely gotten better. Yeah.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit more about the business coach. And you don't have to reveal too much, but what were there other paradigms other than financial that they kind of helped shift? And what was that like? Did they go over everything? What's that kind of relationship look like?
Yeah, great question. So I hired a business coach initially because I wanted to start an associate's photography branch of my business. So I do mostly weddings, and I wanted to bring on a team of other women who would shoot under my brand and book at a lower price point than I did. And I would get a cut of the package. Right. It made sense to me because I like business management. I feel like I'm more of an entrepreneur than I am a photographer. So I'm like less of an artist and more of a business person is how I consider myself. So I felt like I'd be really great at managing this. I love the idea of managing a team. I love the idea of being able to like make a little bit more without actually being away from my family. So I hired a business coach with that in mind. What I also did before hiring him is I'm an avid reader. I love reading business books, and I read the book Living Forward by Michael Hyatt, and I can never remember the co-author's name, but great book. And Living Forward walks you through writing a long-term plan for yourself and considers each relationship aspect of your life in financial terms. So are you in the black or in the red in that relationship. So in your spiritual relationship, with your spiritual health, with your husband, within your marriage, within your parenting, with your kids, within other friends, within other goals and other aspects of your life, like, are you healthy or are you not? Do you have a deficit or are you running in abundance? Do you have a lot saved up in that account? Do you need to like balance things out a little bit more? And the big thing that book did is it encourages its readers to sit down and choose a point in the future. I chose 10 years from now and write kind of a like success definition for each category of your life. And I wrote a bio. So I was like, okay, I'm 42. I live in, this is 10 years from now. I'm 32 now. I'm 42. I'm living in Washington, D.C. This is my husband. Our daughter is this age. Like she's in middle school. Oh my gosh, my business is doing this, like, here's how much we're making. Here's what my general life looks like at the age of 42. So, and then that gives you kind of a point in the future to work towards, to kind of see, okay, does this next step that I'm taking in my business, does it line up with that 10-year plan? This habit that we're developing in our marriage, is it lining up with that 10-year plan? And of course, we all know that our plans don't always come to fruition, and 10 years is a long time from now, and things will probably not look like I wrote down on paper. But the point is intentional steps forward. So when I gave that to my business coach, that was not an assignment from him. That was something I just did on my own. And then he's like, hey, I want you to kind of think through some of these things. And I'm like, hey, already done. Here, let me send you my 10-year plan. That's like 15 pages long. Not joking. And he read through it and we started talking through some of my goals. And he was like, Sarah, I don't think your goals line up with your 10-year plan. Like I see this beautiful picture you've written for yourself for what your 10 years from now looks like. This amazing like life culture with your faith and your family and your business, and the kind of friend to your daughter's friends that you want to be, and the kind of sister and daughter and I'm not seeing that all line up. And he helped me realize that building an associates team is actually writing myself into a 9-to-5 job. That's writing myself into business management, which I'm good at and which I like and which I would actually enjoy, but doesn't line up with who I want to be 10 years from now. So that was really interesting and I thought really helpful, because it wasn't that, oh, you're not gifted in this. No, I am. I would be great at it. And it wasn't that it was even a bad idea financially. I would probably be really profitable at it. But it was not taking me towards the kind of person I wanted to be long term. So for that, he's been worth every penny, because I was about to start down this path that I don't think would have ended very well for me. And so he's helping me think through profitability now and changing my pricing structure a little bit, marketing differently, changing my verbiage, and changing some of the ways that I'm thinking about finances as well.
That's awesome. Do you feel good about it, all those things so far? And I know for having somebody look at your business can be kind of like cringe feeling. Has there been any feelings like that where you're like, oh, or was the associates one of those things where you're like, oh, I thought this would be good and it would be, but it doesn't line up,
Well, I think you may not understand this, but because you're a guy, but, girls don't usually like, stepping out in public first thing in the morning before they have their makeup on.
Right.
So it's like that. Oh, I have it. So basically having a business coach look into the inside of my business feels like I just got out of bed and I haven't showered yet. I'm still working on my coffee and I've got bleary eyes and no makeup. Like, I don't really like how I look right now, but it's good that you're seeing the real. So it's been really good. It's been very, very good for me. The associates thing was probably the thing that changed most. And it was a little hard to hear at first, because I was like, well, I've my dreams, my plans, the amount of time that I've worked on this concept, and I've marketed it and everything, and have people lined up that I want to work as associates for me. And, but I fully agree with him. Once he made that point, I could see it. And I completely agreed. Oh, you're right. This is not who I want to be 10 years from now. I don't want to deal with this. I also had a really hard client situation. I've been so blessed. Most of my clients over the last 11 years have been just lovely, lovely people. Amazing relationships, very family oriented, just darling, darling people.
Yeah.
But I had one really hard client this summer, and my business coach reminded me that being a business manager of a team means that I'm going to be dealing with more hard clients.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't really like that. So we're just not going to Not going to do that.
As the great philosopher Jay-Z once said, more money, more problems.
Oh yeah.
Tell me, and you don't have to go into the particular client per se, but I know for a lot of people, when we have a hard client, because our business is so personal, we take it very personally. So you don't have to necessarily say what went on with the client, but how did you feel during that time? And I feel like sometimes if we get that email or we have a rough time, it affects how we shoot and how we do the other work that's not even related to that person.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I take things very personally. And that was one of the things that helped me realize, oh, managing a big team is not going to be super helpful because I have a really hard time. I take it very personally, and it affects me deeply on every category of my life when I have a client who's not happy with me. And it really wasn't a matter of them. They didn't like my work, but they were also really unhappy with me as a person, which made the situation that much more challenging to deal with. We've resolved the situation, but it was about 15 weeks of discourse back and forth and trying to resolve this situation. So it basically took my whole summer and into the fall, and was very hard emotionally to handle. Again, business coach, amazing, because he helps me. I think one of the things I did wrong early on in my interaction with this client, when talking about their dislike, is he said, I took the advice of some friend who said, do whatever it takes to make the client happy. And so I started down that path, and
that's a long road, Sarah.
It was a very long road.
Yeah.
And when I told my business coach what I'd done, he's like, you're not going to make everybody happy. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm sorry you're not happy. I hope you have a good life. And he's like, there's nothing wrong with saying that. If you've done everything if you fulfilled your contract, you have no obligation to go above and beyond to satisfy what is this is not the same for every client, but in some situations, you do have some people who are just a little unreasonable. And if they're asking unreasonable things, and it's not within your contract, you don't really need to abide by it.
Right. Exactly.
And not everybody's going to be happy with your work. And I just want everybody to love me. So
totally. Yeah.
I want them to.
That's where the personality thing is tough. And I'm in that same spot. And where it's like, if somebody else, like if I had read your, this particular client's emails or something like that, I might have a different perspective on it because it's not towards me. Right. But it's like, it's really tough. And I think it's easy for a business person, like a business coach, to say, hey, just end it, just shut it down. But you and I, we want to, there's this like, it's, I don't know if it's just like, we just want to be loved. I think it's more complex than that. Where it's like, we know, we feel like we've done a good job. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have those weddings where, or those projects where you're like, no, this is great. And I think it's funny, especially for you, I feel like I see your work get featured a lot more than mine because I'm still like figuring out the whole submission thing. I have a buddy helping, which is great. But I'll have work be submitted, and ironically, it wasn't like the couple's favorite work, which is funny. And sometimes it's not even my favorite section of the photos. And, I think it's we want to go above and beyond, and I think it can be really tough. And then you're like, people don't realize even a small comment can, depending on your personality, can make you feel like you start thinking about all your future work through the lens of that feeling. And you're like, oh, I should make sure I don't do this. Or, but at the same time, it's just expectation management, and we do our best. I know you're really good about this, and I do a lot as well, where we're communicators. Like, we communicate a lot, and sometimes, most of the time, 98%, it lands perfectly, and we're like, yes, this is great. Like, they understood it. We got it. We're good. We're into this. And every once in a while, there's just somehow, the expectation doesn't hit. I'm not saying, I don't think you did anything wrong, probably. But it's like one of those basic things where this particular client, and I don't mean to harp on this too long, but this client had some expectations that maybe you didn't even know about, right? And it's like hard to manage those. I wish we could have like a questionnaire that's not like a friendly, like, get to know you one. It's just like, hey, what are your expectations? All of them, every single one. Tell me them now.
Yeah. Well, my questionnaire has some of those and I still missed it. So,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that.
I think that within all of this, it's so important to make sure that your identity is not wrapped up in our jobs. It's so easy. I think, particularly in a creative industry and particularly with the photographers, we introduce ourselves as, hi, I'm Sarah Bradshaw, I'm a photographer. And we kind of then start to think that our identity and our occupation are the same, and they're not.
Yeah.
I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a Christian, I'm a person of integrity. I'm an INFJ. Like there's a lot of other identity qualifiers to my personality, and I'm not just a photographer. Photography is something that I do. It's not someone who I am.
Right.
And I think that we get really, really riled and distraught about unhappy clients when we mistake our occupation for our identity. And I obviously there's still a lot of discomfort that comes when you find someone who's just not happy with your work. And I have I have someone every year. I have a couple every year who there's something that they were not happy with, and I really do go above and beyond and bend over backwards to honor my clients and do whatever I can to make their wedding the best possible experience for them. But there's always something. I had a client a couple of years ago who really hated that she chose yellow flowers, and and I was like, but you chose yellow flowers, but she wanted soft yellow flowers, and they were bright yellow flowers. So back and forth and desaturating yellow flowers. Now, it gets to the point where you're like, I can't desaturate them anymore. They're going to go gray. Like I don't know what you want me to do. Like they're your yellow flowers. So things like that you can't really change a client's preferences, or, oftentimes brides will have a picture of their wedding in their minds. And when their pictures don't match that, that's when disappointment sets in. And that's not our fault. Like sometimes we captured it even better than we made things look even more beautiful than they were in real life. And it still doesn't match what they have in their mind.
Yeah.
But then again, it's, we are not, we're more than just photographers. And I think that also helps me operate with empathy and humility towards my clients. And I recognize that I'm a person, they're a person, that their complaints aren't against me and my identity. They may just have issues with the work that I'm doing, but I can still care for them with empathy and gentleness and respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about like our relationship with our clients, or as far as our identity being like really close to our business and how clients affect that. But even circling back just to finish out with our money talks is like, our identity being close to our business also deals with like how we deal with money. Like I always say that money is an amplifier of who you are. So if you're a greedy person, then more money will just make you more greedy. If you're a generous person, then money will make you more generous. If you're frugal, then you'll be frugal with more. Like it's like if your personality is, maybe you want to, like for me, I love taking people out for dinner, and I love like, I've actually never shared this on the podcast because I try not to talk about it, but a buddy of mine who I went to school with, we would always talk about our student loans when we worked together, and we're just hustling. We're trying to pay these off, and we're just trying really hard and picking up side gigs and all kinds of things. And things had really, like I've been super blessed the past few years, and I surprised him by paying off the rest of his student loans.
Oh.
And it was like such a fun experience. And for me, I didn't even want to I didn't send him like a nice note or anything. I was just like, hey, I hope this helps. Enjoy, because I know the stress and the identity issues that go along with, you're like, oh, why can't I pay my student loans? And he's another guy. And I know guys struggle with like, why can't I take on this issue full on like I want to? And it was so fun. But, at the same time, in order to do that, I had to make sure that things were okay in the Mason photography kingdom, if you will. And if my personal life as well, something I talked to my wife about, we were planning a wedding, and obviously personal finances should go towards that. And I was just like, babe, I feel like this is the right thing to do, and I think like that is another situation, not even on the client side, where we still have to check ourselves and where we fall with our business and our identity. And I love that you're like, you kind of explain like, no, you're a mom and a wife and, a caregiver and a parishioner of a local congregation and a community person, and you're involved in like, it's not just the photographer business owner. And I love that. it's super good to hear that. So kind of transition into just kind of finishing out, like what does your plan look like now, Sarah? Like what is 2018, whether it's business and personal, like what does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a planner by nature. I think I wrote my first 5-year plan when I was 17, and I've written one every year since. So that's a lot of years of 5-year plans. It's 15 years of 5-year plans. So a lot. So I have an answer to your question, which is great. So 2018, I'm really excited to work with some amazing clients on their weddings. My daughter she'll be 2 in March, and our marriage we'll be celebrating 5 years of marriage in 2018. So I think we're going to try to take a trip to Europe. So finances are kind of working towards that. And then something I've wanted to do for years, and I'm just dabbling my toes into it, interior design photography. So I have bigger dreams of being published in Architectural Digest than I have being published in Martha Stewart Weddings. And that's just a crazy little quirk of mine. I love interior design. I love architecture so much. And I want to take pretty pictures of home. So that I'm pursuing that a little bit more on a professional basis, not just doing a couple of shoots here and there for friends, but actually pursuing it professionally. So trying to add that into as another stream of revenue, in addition to weddings. But yeah, I think that 2018 is just going to be a sweet, quiet, put your head down and work really hard and trust God for the future kind of year. And I'm really excited about it. I've got some great weddings. Another great thing that's come as a result of having a good business coach is I'm setting my systems in place for my workflow in a different way. And the implication for that is in every year past, when I get to the fall, which we're currently in, this is what I call, like fall is for photographers, what spring is for accountants, right? We're going crazy. Like it's so much work. It's so intense. And I think every photographer needs just an extra hug in October and November, because it's a lot of work. And I get burned out every single year. December is usually one of the worst months for me. I just struggle a lot with, get seasonal affective depression. It's just really like intense work. Everyone wants their pictures before Christmas, and I can never keep up with anything. And I hit January, and I'm just like dead. I just want to sleep for 2 months. And then, so anytime I get an inquiry for January, anytime January through April, I'm a little hesitant to follow up on it, because I just really crave that rest time. But the benefit of having really amazing systems in place is I get a new inquiry for March. I'm about to book a wedding for March, and I'm excited about it. I have a December 31st wedding this year, like New Year's Eve, and then I'm shooting again 2 weeks later, and then I'm shooting again in March. And I'm not like, it would have been normally that I would have said, no, I need 3 months off. I really need just like not off work entirely. I do a lot of back end work. That's when I like launch new websites. That's when I am, doing all my submissions. That's when I'm getting my books in order for tax season. And
right.
So lots of work, but not a lot of weddings. But I'm ready to take them on because I've got good systems in place. And I'm really excited about that.
I love that. Can you share one system with us? Not like a whole system, but maybe, are you just saying to yourself, hey, in these light months, I only want to take X number of weddings? Or what's your new philosophy for the winter weddings, if you will?
Yeah. So one thing that Buck and I did once we had our daughter, London, we decided that we would not take more than 3 weddings in a row. So we would always have a weekend off in a month. And that's been really, really good for us. I'm also not taking any double headers anymore. I used to do double headers. Sometimes I'd do double headers out of state. So, I'd shoot a wedding in Alexandria on a Friday, and then get on a plane late that night and fly up to Minnesota for a wedding on Saturday. I've totally done that before, and that's really intense. And we've just decided that we're not going to do that. That we need a weekend off with no engagement sessions, no weddings, no work, once a month. For our family, for our sanity, for our emotional health, for our marriage.
I love that.
And all of that. Yeah. So then when, Yeah, so that's basically our rule, and my goal is to not take more than 20 weddings in a year. But I feel like I don't know. We'll just see. We'll see. I do have an editor, so that helps a lot. And I've changed some of the ways that I've handled getting images to my editor. So I usually edit a selection of favorites, and then she matches my edits. So I'm giving creative direction, but she's actually doing all of the grunt work, which helps me a lot. I can actually take on more work. Yeah,
I love that. That's super cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Sarah, for being on the podcast. And I know it's kind of crazy to share. I mean, we shared a lot today. Like, we shared changes in your finance plans and struggles with clients and our identity stuff. But seriously, like, it's so good. And I feel like, again, this podcast is a place where not a lot of people, people aren't sharing this kind of stuff outwardly. It's not as common for us to have a blog post about this and say, hey, everybody, look at my failure, or look at my reconstruction, or look at my change. And so I really appreciate your transparency and being here and just sharing a little about it, because everybody goes through it and we need to help each other and we need to figure this out. And I love it. So thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure. I am where I am today through a lot of hard work, a lot of grace of God, and a lot of help from other people, and a lot of people who just were willing to answer questions when I had them. And so I want to be able to do the same for others. And I love coaching. I love answering questions, and I love helping other people be successful. So I'm really thankful to you for hosting and creating the opportunity for me to share.
Oh, thank you. We're a good family over here. We're everybody, all the guests kind of live far away, but we need to have like a bearded talk party or something, or a get together. But
yes, do it.
Yeah. So we'll, I know that you're launching your website. I think it's launching today, right?
That's the goal. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, hey, so this episode will come out in a week or so you'll have some time. By the time this comes out, definitely go check out Sarah Bradshaw's website. I'll link it in the show notes, and definitely say hi to her on Instagram. I feel like that's the best mix, where she's shows her work, but then also you can see her really cute daughter and her really fun husband. And I feel like are you guys doing anything for Halloween?
No,
like
I don't know. I don't know.
Whatever. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we might. So, okay, here's the thing. She goes to bed at 7, so it's kind of a womp womp to like do anything fun with her. And she's not old enough to remember. And like giving candy to a 19-month-old, I'm like, no. Yeah. So, I mean, we have all of these crazy fun Halloween plans, but it'll probably just be a quiet work day.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like when we first met, your daughter was like small enough that she could almost fit in some pumpkins, and now she's walking around and like has friends and stuff like that. She's so cute. That's hilarious.
I know.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. I can't wait to have you on again sometime, and I wish all the best for you.
Thanks, Adam. Love to talk to you again sometime.
That was awesome. I love chatting with Sarah Bradshaw, and guys, she's intentional. If you know everything about her work, or you follow her work, she's just got it together, or at least feels like she has it together. She's a very experienced photographer, and one of those people, at least in the DC area, like, she's just ready to help out and answer questions at any time, and I absolutely love that. And like I said, like, her Instagram stories are filled with lots of cuteness, like her daughter, and just the fun weddings that she does, and she's just like, she's awesome. She's a person I think all of us could strive to be. So definitely check out her new website, and definitely go say hi on Instagram and say that the Bearded Talk sent you. She's got great work and great insight. Thank you so much. In the meantime, if you would love to support the show, I think right now we would absolutely love a review on iTunes. That's really what I would love. We would love a review on iTunes. You can say whatever you want about the podcast. Let me know. I read all of them. And I would love for you to review the podcast on iTunes. It just helps us get into other categories and helps other people see the show that I think could benefit from it. It's free, right? Like, it's free knowledge that we're giving away. And I would love if you could do that. So thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.